Hi class, we left off at communication competence. This is the fourth part and the final part of your lecture on an introduction to interpersonal communication or an overview of interpersonal communication. And I'm going to pop right over there right now. Okay, here we go. So what do we mean by cultural? Sorry about that. What do we mean by communication competence? What we're talking about is how do we get competent? How do we do communication well? How do we become a good communicator? So the definition of it is an ability to achieve goals while maintaining or enhancing a relationship in which it occurs. That's one definition. I like to think of it as the ability to, your goal could be to have intimacy within that, but you want to help maintain relational maintenance as well as make your relationship deeper and better and more connected. And we'll be talking about this when I think about this, like, why do we want this? Well, let's go back to that idea of intrinsic rewards, right? We feel rewarded when we are loved, when we feel close, when we can trust someone, when we feel like someone's got our back, right? That happens through interpersonal communication. It doesn't happen through necessarily small group communication or public speaking. It happens on that one-on-one level. And you need to know that there's no particular way that we have to communicate. There's no ideal way that we communicate. That different situations call for different types of communication. And communication, again, is relevant to, it's that relational and content dimension, right? Remember we talked about the characterized by that? So depending on what your relationship is and who you are, your identity will determine like what is your best way to communicate with your partner or your friend or your family member. So it's situational and relational. Knowing that, and when you become competent in that, that's when you start to have what we call emotional intelligence, right? That's what you're after, is to understand that when you go over and you're with your boyfriend and you're meeting his family for the first time, how do you act, right? Being culturally, or I keep saying that, being competent in communication will help you know what it is by paying attention, by listening to what does your boyfriend say about his family. What are the rules in the family? What are the traditions? Who are our family members? How are their how is his mom and dad like? Cultural competence can be learned. I'm hoping that you all, oh my gosh, communication competence can be learned. And here's some general characteristics of what we think of competent communicators, which you could get cultural competence to. You have all kinds of responses to different situations, right? I was just talking about that. Knowing how to act in one situation and knowing how to act in another situation. How do you act at school? How do you act in your family? How do you act with people you've never met? I'll always say that politeness goes a long way. Sounds like old school, right? But politeness goes a long way. Having that repertoire of behaviors and responses. Knowing when to choose what you need depending on that person, whatever the situation or the goal that you have in mind. Being skilled at performing that kind of communication. So one of the ways that you can become skilled is by gaining confidence in yourself, right? Self-esteem. Next week, we're going to talk about identity needs or our own identity and communication. You're able to exhibit what we call cognitive complexity, which means you're able to maneuver yourself in different situations and think about your behavior and think about those words. We've been talking about that as we're meeting virtually, the importance of using your words specifically and carefully and with cognition or with cognitivity, with thinking about how this might, with empathy, right? How this might impact someone, how I say this. Because there's a loss of the situation of being one face-to-face. No one can read nonverbals. So our words carry more importance and weight. And finally, can you be empathic? Can you try to put yourself in someone's shoes? Do you even attempt to do that? Do you try to think, what would it be like if I had different color skin and I had to walk through the world brown if I'm a white person, right? Do you think about that, right? If you're because of the way our society is structured, people that aren't white have a much better idea of what it's like to walk through the world white. But white people lack that thought and structure. It's called white privilege. But the point is, do you think about that? And if you're a male in the society, I know that there's a lot of balance between men and women these days, but males still have privilege that women don't. Women are called on stuff that men are never called on. So if you're a male, do you think about what is it like to be a female in this world? Would you want to be one? Right? So that's what it means about empathy. Can you try to empathize, put yourself in their situation and try to feel? Now you're never going to feel what someone feels because you're not them, but you can try. Are you good at, right? A competent communicator is someone who's good at self-monitoring. Self-monitoring is paying attention to your own reactions, having some emotional management system, right? It's knowing. Teachers have to learn this. I'll give you a great example. So you've heard it. You've been in classes. Students say silly stuff, right? And sometimes students say out of context stuff or obnoxious stuff or totally inappropriate stuff. As a teacher, you have to handle that in a very appropriate way. And what if the student is rude, right? And they're really trying to get you to react to them? You still have to be monitoring of yourself. That's the appropriate professional way, right? So being a competent communicator has some ability to monitor themselves. That's not just responding, but also knowing how you might be impacting someone else. Paying attention to someone's nonverbal cues, paying attention to the words someone uses on virtual media here, right? Paying attention to how they say it. You might go, oh, delete, 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 or backspace, backspace, backspace. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should say something else, right? I've done it in emails. I start off and then I go, that's not the right thing to say. I need to be more kind, or I need to be more lenient, or maybe I need to be tougher, right? Who knows? Self-monitoring, understanding how you affect people, understanding what it is about you. And finally, this is the last one. Being committed. Are you committed to your relationships? Are you willing to stick it through? Right? Competent communicators stick it through until you're done. And again, that done could be deciding to agree to disagree. But you stay committed. You're in it. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to give up. You're in it. Right? So while your buttons may be pushed in this class, I invite you to stay committed through the process. I do this with my public speaking class all the time. Public speaking is very uncomfortable, right? They're going to feel great discomfort, but I ask them to just stick it through. So if you want to become a competent communicator in your interpersonal relationships, ask yourself, can I be empathic? Can I monitor my own reactions and my own thoughts? Meaning, do I have control of them? Do I make choices? Right? Do I have this ability to communicate in different scenarios, in different ways? And am I committed? Am I going to stick it out? Because if you don't, there is a saying, and I believe it too, whatever you're not dealing with, you'll have to deal with it eventually. So that's my overview for interpersonal communication. And next week, we will talk about communication and identity. And that, my friends, is it. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye. See you later.